Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tea with TPS, informal conversations with thought leaders of India and the world. Today, our distinguished guest is Mrs. Jaya Chandrasekhar, an exceptionally gifted writer, thinker, and trainer, equipped with a master's degree in English literature and also a teacher's degree. She has proved to be not only a writer, but also an exceptional teacher. We had the privilege of having her teach our students at the NSS Academy. She has recently published two books. One called A Walk to Tintern Abbey and Beyond. Everyone will understand what Tintern Abbey is. And the cover shows the nature that Wordsworth and incidentally they are like very much. And this is a journey through English literature which she has enjoyed and picked up some masters and take the readers with her through the vistas of experience, romance, and everything in these writers. The second one is very different. It is called Happily Being Me. And as the title suggests, it's entirely personal. Her experiences, whether it is a small experience, a small event, or whether it is something which is of global importance like COVID-19, she captures all that and her responses to it. It shows a sensitive mind, a mind that absorbs technology, understands the changes in human life, and she tries to read meanings into them and gives her insights into these events, big and small. So we have a big feast of these two books, and she has very graciously agreed to talk about these books to me for the benefit of those who have not read the books yet and also those who have already read them. So here you are. Welcome, Mrs. Jaya Chandrasekhar.
Thank you very much. And what I like about this is it's not merely a talk show, it's a conversation. E.M. Foster, long back in 1910, he said, just connect. Little did he realize that today, all we would be doing is just connecting, forwarding, that's it.
And lack of connections are the problem.
Yes, and lack of connections because we don't have a healthy, good conversation. There's a flight from conversation. So you don't have a face-to-face nice conversation. And I think that is one of the very troublesome consequences of technology. That there's a flight, if you notice this generation, even the older generation, there is a flight from conversation. They'd rather be looking at their phones than looking at you and really understanding you, listening to you, because I feel that is what we really miss, and a conversation with you or a conversation with anyone, it increases your capacity to empathize. You empathize, and then it creates that joy, of being heard, being understood. And this is how I feel you understand yourself and you are able to relate to others and you are able to very actively and fully engage with life. So I think conversations are very, very necessary, especially in this age when we face a lot of challenges because of technology.
Absolutely. That's why we are together tonight this year.
Yes.
And of course, talking of connections, we know how we managed the last 2 or 3 years without social contact, social distancing.
Yes.
But what kept us alive was the technology, enabled us to communicate with people even while maintaining social distances and masks and various things. I hope that age is over, but we still have gained much from that experience. It was a blessing in disguise in a sense that most of us were not interested in technology, got interested in it because it became a matter of survival. Well, shall we start with a little look into your career and your life, the highlights of them?
So you would like to know how I plunged into teaching?
Yes, whatever.
Yes.
Whatever you are today.
Whatever. Yes. Teaching has always been a passion with me. I would say actually I just stumbled into it because I was so fascinated that I just walked into Chinmaya Vidyalaya. This was Ernakulam, and they were the ones who gave me the first break. And then I enjoyed it so much that I was, motivated, I was inspired, and I took my B.Ed, an actual course I did, St. Joseph's Academy, Training Academy. It was like being a student all over again. So, I mean, that was how I started. And then later on, of course, I had very good experiences in Trivandrum. Trivandrum, St. Thomas Residential School. I taught there. And actually, when I went for the interview, I was hoping that the principal would give me, a senior class, because I always felt, that is what I should aim for. But he gave me the first standard, he gave me tiny tots.
Yeah.
And then I was so disappointed. I said, oh my God, how am I going to manage?
You were ready to read Shakespeare to the final year class, were you?
Yes. And then he told me that I found you so good, and that is why I'm giving you the first standard. And
And then you, of course, graduated too, even
yes,
the civil service students.
yes, that was, I would say, liberating. That is where actually I found my own space and my own calling. Because see, I worked in Lingua in Delhi, an international school. But everywhere I found that it was very structured. The course was very structured, and that is not my cup of tea. I like a lot of freedom when I teach. I like to experiment. I like to be adventurous. I like to tune in to what the students want. So even if I prepared a particular, subject, if the students are not in the mood for it, I take it somewhere else. So I really enjoyed that about teaching, but here in Lingua, it was a system, and we had to follow a methodology. And that
Yes,
was
teaching
really,
civil service candidates is a different experience
that
because
was lovely. That was
everything is
lovely
in their
because you could,
syllabus. So you need to go far and wide wherever you want to go, as long as you can
yes,
retain their attention. So that's really a good experience. And
yes,
you can share your reading, you can share your knowledge otherwise, even if it is not strictly in the syllabus. But creative writing, when did you start? Because in our master's degree courses in the past, at least during my time, years ago, there was no creative writing at all. Nobody asked us to write a poem or a short story or nothing. We were only reading other people's poems and short stories and
or
novels.
probably writing essays or
Yes, that's
answers.
different. But
It
I'm
was,
saying creative
yes,
writing. Creative
yes.
writing was not part of our education at all. But now I believe it has changed. So when did you start that and how?
Actually, I think it was the flip side of COVID. When the pandemic started, I wasn't comfortable with online classes. So then I just gave up teaching. When I gave up teaching, I sort of, took to writing, because I used to walk a lot and I would look around, and basically I see a lot of beauty around. My senses are like alive, to the beauty, to the magic. I see miracles. So, I just got curious and fascinated, and I would come home and just jot down something. And that's how I got interested in writing, creative writing. My first book, of course, I wanted to, because I had done a lot of work, a lot of groundwork while I was teaching the civil service aspirants. So I had the whole lot of stuff staring at me, and I wanted to make good use of it. So if you notice, it's basically based on their syllabus, the paper one, what they had, poetry or drama or something. So that is how it took off. But the second book is totally, it's just a play of my imagination, memories, nostalgia, everything, my observations, my
I would say
perspective.
gay abandon.
Gay abandon, absolutely.
That's the right phrase.
Absolutely, yes,
I mean,
yes.
that's
And
what
that's something I
where is
enjoy.
it going next? You don't know. Whether it is from a thought
Yes, I
from a
think you can
small
wake up
dog
when you
about
read
his
the book.
master.
Yes, when you read the
To
book
the
also.
biggest tragedy on earth, the COVID-19, and move from one to the other with great ease because you're not trying to bring in a logic between the two. It was scattered, and that's why I remembered Cabbages and Kings, the famous novel,
Yes,
novel by O.
yes,
Henry.
yes.
And it
In
of course
fact,
comes from Lewis Carroll, comes from the children's story, where they talk about cabbages and kings. It's a phrase that he invented to have something which involves everything. You can shift from cabbage to kings. It's so different thing. So Alice in Wonderland is where he first created it, and then O. Henry adopted it, and now you seem to have picked it up.
yes, in fact, actually, someone asked me, what's the theme? Is there some kind of a thread that runs through all this? Nothing at all. Nothing at all. I think they are more like impressions. And what I found was a linear structure, something very organized, step by step, has always eluded me. I've been very comfortable with, letting my imagination go where it wants. So I wouldn't say it's like Virginia stream of consciousness. Yeah, that would be, oh my God, that would be blasphemous
That
actually.
would be different. That we'll not be able to understand. But in your case, we understand your thoughts.
Yes,
Virginia Woolf,
when we,
waiting to
yes,
understand.
that's
And
true.
yeah, so that, and also they are very brief pieces. You're
Yes,
never bored. By the time, when you start reading, when the chapter ends, oh, why did it end here? She could have gone on for some more time. And you are jumping into yet another subject, entirely different.
totally different. Yes, yes. That's how my mind works, and then I was just wondering, why is it I can't systemize? And then I was listening to a very interesting talk by this British researcher, Simon Cohen, I think, Simon Cohen, yes. Now, he says there are different kinds of brains. Basically, those who systemize, for them, it is about if and then. If this happens, then this happens. So it's a very logical kind of kind of a structure. For others, he says it's more the why. So it's more empathy. It's more getting into the emotions and feelings and responses of another person. So, projecting all that. So he says that there is a slant somewhere, you know, and I don't know if he is right, but he says generally the masculine brain is if and then, and the feminine goes into more about why.
Possible. But
And that's it. That I thought was interesting.
But what I found interesting was also that when you finish reading the book, you get to know a lot about a number of things, but also we see your insights into those, some of those which one had never thought of. And therefore, all those could combine into a wholesome presentation. You may not have felt it that way, but a keen reader would understand that there is a method in this madness. Don't you agree?
That's very, very true, because someone reading it said that it's a reflection. So, I mean, you're so open, you're so transparent. It's like you've been writing from your heart. So it's a reflection of who you are, what you think, how you feel. So that
Yes,
is
there
when
are many
I
aspects.
realize it has a lot of me there.
Exactly. That's it. That is what it is all about. Happily being me.
Yes.
So that's a very striking title. What about your experience abroad? How did you imbibe a number of thoughts, ideas from other people, writers, other uh, kinds of people? Say, like you were in Geneva, you were in Brussels. Of course, you were not in that country as such, because as diplomats, we never belong to them. We are still
Yes.
observers. But you must have learned a lot, whatever in your interest, whether it is literature or other things. You must have had a new experience there.
Absolutely. For me, like, it's always been more experiential. interacting with great minds, you know, the whole experience of being, for example, in Brussels. Brussels was all gray and bleak. You know, the
Yeah,
winter, and wearing all those woolens and layers and layers and layers, I would be so uncomfortable. But Brussels again was my first interface with the foreign service, people there. And especially because as soon as we arrived, the next morning itself, the ladies called me. And that was my first glimpse into what it's like to be the spouse of, you know, a foreign service person. Yes. So those sort of experiences, and then, you know, the kind of, it was a very different way of life, the way they looked at things, the way they appreciated and enjoyed themselves. So all that I would say was a learning experience. Yes.
You read my book on the Foreign Service. You
Yes.
know. I codified all that. You must have noticed it in various ways.
Yeah.
But it is a remarkably different life because the kind of people you meet are exceptionally different. Everybody more talented, more rich, more knowledgeable than you.
Very true. Very, very true. Very, very true. But it was interesting that they found me, you know, the first thing a lady who came to visit me, she was curious about who this new person is. And she said, wow, you're like a, you know, breath of fresh air. You're so refreshing. Because I was all starry-eyed, untutored, and, you know, as plain and simple as we are back home, you know. There are no inhibitions.
That's the
We
difference.
we don't discipline ourselves, you know. So
Every
it's
3 years you have that experience. So, and that enriches you a lot. Nothing like the one that you saw before. And therefore you.
very different, very different. So then, you know, I learned a lot of things. I learned a different way of, you know, living and thinking and appreciating the kind of elegance, the grace. And they had this, I would say, aesthetic sense, you know, for everything. The way they planned the menu, the way they, you know, laid the table, the way they did little things. There was this eye for beauty. It's almost like a Japanese thing, you know. The
Yeah.
Japanese have it for minute details. Yeah, there's so much of
The
beauty.
smallest of things they use for decoration. They never
Things.
have 2,000 flowers in one pot.
No, the elegance of it. So I learned a lot. You're right.
Simplicity.
That was a huge learning experience here. The other thing I noticed in Brussels was about the old men and women, extremely old, infirm. They'd be using a walking stick. They'd be walking very slowly.
But they will still beautify themselves
That's
and elegantly.
immaculately dressed with the makeup intact. And I would always wonder. Then later I learned that it was social courtesy. They say
Other,
you have to dress, yes, because otherwise you're not showing respect for the other person. So I got to learn, and then the kind of independence. You know, if I reached out to help them, that would be, they wouldn't take it well. That kind of fierce independence and how they, you know, lived their lives, whatever the hardship. I found a kind of stoic, you know, attitude towards life. And the thing is, they appreciated India so much. They just loved us. I mean, I would talk to people and they just loved us for the values we have, for the traditions we cherish. And they would, yes, and they would always say the way we take care of old people. I think that is something they miss because they are on their own. I mean, social security is there, but they're on their own. And they would always tell me that. In India, back home, the way family is all important, the way you look after your old parents, you know, the aged. So,
all this, the credit goes to Sri K.M. Chandrasekhar, who married you. And
oh
he,
yes, oh yes, oh yes, he was the most coveted bachelor.
that's what
Because
I was going to say. And therefore, that is the experience, though he was in the IAS rather than the IFS. I wish he had joined the IFS. But he was an ambassador to WTO. Then he was in Brussels. And my own batchmate was the ambassador, PK Singh, in Brussels. And he used to speak very highly of him in every way. And he's universally recognized as one of the topmost bureaucrats, cabinet secretary. There's no job that he has not done. And tell me about his influence on you, because you praise him for inspiring, encouraging, everything that which every husband does. But what does Mr. Chandrasekhar bring into your life?
Okay. Frankly speaking, I was fresh out of college, all starry-eyed, when I got like engaged to Shekhar and marriage was on the cards. Now, for me, the aura or the power or the glamour of the service, it wasn't there in my head. I didn't realize at that point of time.
Who was
Because
he then? He was a collector or something? What was he when he got married to you?
no, his first posting was a sub-collector. No, when he had just finished his training.
Oh, okay.
Just finished his training. I was fresh out of college. And in those days, this was, I think, getting into the civil service was like the pinnacle of career choices. And it was very, very difficult to get in. And he was a rank holder. So
Even
he
it is
had,
so now. Even now it is so.
yes. But I think it was more so because the choices were very limited.
You mean
Isn't it?
smaller numbers?
Yes. Smaller numbers, and you had like maybe medicine or you went for, I mean, getting into the government service itself was very, very prestigious. Isn't it? The kind of, I feel there was an aura, especially around the civil service.
Yeah.
In
But
those
it still remains. Largely, it still remains. Everyone goes after millionaires jobs and so on. They're paid much better. But even they sometimes give up and come back and take the examination. Of course, during our time, there was shorter period.
That is there. They always say it is that they want to do something for their country. I feel there's probably a sense of purpose and a lot of satisfaction that comes in the civil service. So with him, it was like that. So everybody would look at me and then they say, "Oh my God, you engaged to
Lucky.
IAS. Yeah, what a lucky girl." And the girls were, of course, green with envy. Why couldn't we have been there? And things like that. But all that escaped me. What I saw in front of me was a warm, genial, witty person, and I fell in love with him. Disarmingly. I mean, he was so simple. He was like your neighbor next door. There was nothing, but that kind of a sheen. People made me, say, "Oh my God, it's an IAS guy." So it was not there, that is what struck me. There was so much. He had that playful sense of humor. So
Yes.
my years of marriage, I mean, yes, and he was all PG Woodhouse, so you can imagine. Even on the wedding day, I could, I literally saw him as Bertie Wooster being railroaded into marriage, and looking for Jeeves, "Hey, help me." Because he was so cool, he was so relaxed, and father-in-law was getting all panicky, said, "Time up, come on, come on, come on, how long are you there?" And he was busy reading Woodhouse. He was so relaxed, he was so, and I think that was there all through. Whatever the challenges, he's faced a lot of in his career also, the crisis or the critical moments. He took everything. I don't know how he managed, but the way it never showed. When he was at home, he was all with the family.
Always calm. Always.
Yes.
Yeah. I've never seen him losing temper or getting excited.
No. Getting jittery, or I've never seen him like that, and that has always, intrigued me, and I admire him for that. He's always very cool. That composure is there, and the thing is, he never spoke. He never brought work home. I mean, he never spoke about his work. So I didn't get a chance to really know the kind of work he was doing. So it was only when I would meet others, they would tell me, and I would marvel, "Oh my God, this guy has been doing all this." So they would tell me about him or his character traits or the tremendous achievements or something like that. That's how.
Okay, coming back to your books, the first book.
Yes.
Very fascinating, because I myself am a literature aficionado, so I read it with very keen interest, and I read with many of the thoughts that you had. But I had new insights, like, for example, Wordsworth.
Yeah.
Seems to be a hero for you. And there is a lot of references to Wordsworth. Tintern Abbey itself is Wordsworth. But as you rightly pointed out somewhere, we all think that Wordsworth was a lover of nature.
Yes.
He himself has characterized himself as a person who is interested in the mind. And his love for nature and his analysis of it related entirely to his own worldview and his own mind. This is something which I had not read anywhere else. And that struck me as unusual experience or unusual narration of his genius. How did you come to that conclusion?
No, because see, whenever you look at his poems, it's not like a picturesque description of nature. It's always what nature, the connect with man. Whether it's the leech gatherer, you have the solitary reaper. It's always he gets into the depths of life and man. Michael, for instance, the relationship, the tragedy. So all that comes to the fore.
So
And
he's as much a poet of mankind or humans as of nature. That's what you mean.
yes,
And he saw the linkages.
yes, and he saw what the industrial society was doing to man. He
Yes,
could.
even that very
Felt.
simple poem, a simple poem that we all know by heart, Daffodils. You know,
Yes, that was my first. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high. Yes, yes,
everybody who studied in Kerala knows it by heart. But
yes,
again, we only think in terms of the nature. But at the end of it, when he thinks of his pensive moods when these come back to him,
yes.
that is
That's
something probably we missed at that particular time.
for oft when on my couch I lie.
Uh,
Yeah.
and
But
how the daffodils come back and brighten his night. And,
everywhere, Tintern also, you see. Yeah. And I think he genuinely felt he has so much faith. For him, nature was a living presence and the connect with humanity. The more he felt, the more mankind distanced itself from nature, the more the problems would increase. So he really felt that nature was the savior for mankind, could be a guide, a philosopher. So he was looking more into that than just the beauty of nature.
yes, so that is why you have kind of narrated or traced his journey from
Yes.
Nabi and beyond. And that was very, very, very fascinating. And then there are others who you talk about, because you have been very selective. Now I know it, you're actually following the syllabus of the civil service examination. I had not
Yes.
and but these are not natural choices when you come to Shakespeare, for example.
That's a very, very good good question there. Not really. Not really. King Lear, yes. Tempest was never one of my favorites. Hamlet, yes. Julius Caesar, yes. So, I had, yes, those predilections.
Because you speak a lot about King Lear. I also feel
Lear,
that
yes. King
it's a
Lear, yes. Yes,
fascinating play.
yes, yes.
Although
I think
the tragic flaw in King Lear was not such a serious flaw as in human beings, just love for each other or vanity. Every Shakespearean tragic hero has a tragic flaw,
yeah, the fatal flaw. Yeah.
and or jealousy. So many in other plays, but here it was not a fault of his in that sense. His vanity or affection for his children is a very natural one. But that turns out into a tragic war. That is the tragedy of that story, isn't it?
King Lear.
Yes.
Now, King Lear was also, I feel he was, his world view was it was centered on him. To King Lear, he was the hub of the universe. So I think that arrogance was there. The power he exercised, and he saw himself as that. So that is why he could,
That is
yes,
vanity.
he
That
couldn't
is
bear
vanity.
it, yes.
But therefore, he did not even understand his own children. Because when the reaction came from their children in different ways, he was not able to accept that. And then
Yes,
from there, he
he
was
was so
willing to
full of
jump into the
himself.
storm and scream about his life, etc. What a transformation! He had simply wanted to divide the kingdom into three and give all of them equal shares. That's what he had planned to do. But a mere remark from his youngest daughter threw him into a rage. And that is where the tragedy came and led to one after the other, isn't it? So that way, I think King Lear is different from others. Others plotted their stories. Macbeth, for example, he was aiming.
Yes.
Othello was very
Hello
supportive
again.
of his wife. But here it is very different. That's why I thought King Lear was very different from the other Shakespearean plays. But nobody can be, unaffected by Shakespeare if you have ever read them or learnt about it, because that stays in your life. And they are all like book of quotations. Every day you can cover your life with quoting Shakespeare.
Yes,
Justify-
that's very true.
justify even the exact opposites. On the one hand, you can say that all this is because of the moon and the star and all that at one point, and another point saying that you are your own destiny and it's in your hands. So both these he says, each time it is convincing for you. And that is, I think, is the remarkable part about reading Shakespeare, I thought. And the sonnets, what do you think of them?
Sonnets, yes, not all of them. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Some of them are beautiful. But okay, I wasn't too fascinated by the sonnets. But actually, I was quite attracted to Christopher Marlowe.
Oh.
The passion and the poetry, in Marlowe, I mean, especially Dr. Faustus, even, Tamerlane or the Jew of Malta.
Was that the face that launched the thousand
On
ships?
Helen of Troy. So I feel that, no Marlowe, no Shakespeare.
No,
And
some people think,
Shakespeare wouldn't have been the Shakespeare we know.
some people think that was the same person.
That's also there because I think they were,
Because nobody knows who Shakespeare was. Was he the man that you see in the picture?
Yes, there's a question mark. Yes.
Was he a different kind of person? And all those are, anyway, we are not going to that, but that is for the students to figure out.
Marlowe,
My happiest
I
moment.
found, even the blank verse he used,
Yeah.
the blank verse he used, and unfortunately, 29 he died. Had he lived,
What should have been?
yes, that would have been stiff competition for Shakespeare.
Absolutely. I was going to say my happiest moment in my life was visiting Stratford-on-Avon for the first time. When I joined the Foreign Service, he said, now I can go and see Shakespeare's birthplace. And the first opportunity, we went to London straight away. We were not interested in London. We treated small children, Lekha, they were not so interested in all this. But they dragged them there. And now my children, even now, are great fans of Shakespeare because that one particular trip that we made when they were very young. And that was fascinating, the impression that it made on them. What we had while reading, by being there, they changed personalities. And even now, even they started reading Lamb's stories from Shakespeare. And now the grandchildren are learning. So it's a greatly fascinating story. But surprisingly, you jump to Henrik Ibsen while narrating this. Of course, he's not an English writer. But what is it that attracted to Ibsen?
Again, as I said, I was, looking at their syllabus. So it generally went in that order. That's why I went on to Ibsen. But Ibsen, yes, I really, really liked The Doll's House. And, how that was a revolutionary thing. I mean, how he, with the very simple people and ordinary everyday language like Wordsworth almost, he has brought out the complexity, the tragedy. And
unlike most women, she walks out on him and bangs the door behind. And that is something which has reverberated all around the world of all women.
And in those days, it was so daring, so bold. So I don't know, people say he was, a feminist, but he himself said that it was not that at all. I think he's talking of the human race in general, how everyone has to look at the possibilities and the potential to explore that. You have a right to develop that. That's what he says. But Nora comes out as a very, very powerful, strong woman. And what a contrast from how she's portrayed in the outset. And then what
And how
happens.
she had imagined him to be.
Yes. And when he falls from, the pedestal, the anguish, and how boldly she takes that decision and she walks out. Because she realizes she doesn't even know herself.
Yeah.
Because all along, yes, all along the shadow, and she sort of adored him. So it was always about him.
Yes, in fact, we have a famous playwright in Malayalam called N. Krishnapilla. He was my professor, principal.
Mm.
He is known as Kerala Ibsen because he does deal with such high-strung drama about human life, ordinary life, but in the plays, they become gigantic human beings. That's something that has always attracted me. Are you weary of or wary of technology? Well, you get mixed feelings in different.
That's an interesting question. I must confess, one, I am a technophobe. And I think there are others also in high places who are technophobes. So I'm in good company. And I mean, like I'm jinxed, bizarre things happen, hilarious things happen, all kinds of crazy things. And I have this lurking suspicion that, it's human. Yeah, and it is able to sense, and it's sort of teasing me. So, I get that uncanny feeling sometimes. Because just the other day, it was very embarrassing actually. I suddenly got on a video call with one of the residents here. And he said, hi. And I said, hey, I never intended this at all. How come I have you there? These sort of crazy things happen with technology, somewhere, something, and it just takes off. So that is one thing.
There is a deeper reason, like Dr. Ayyappa Panikkar, in his poem, Hey Gagarin, I'm sure you have read it. And you seem to reflect that in some of your essays in your new book. Because what he says there is, he says, Gagarin, go away. That's how it starts saying, because you have revealed to us all the things that we thought were real, and now it is not real. So our imagination, everything that we used to think that God is there, and you have got, little people around them and all those things. You went there and found there was nothing. See? So he says, go away from my path because I want to pursue my path of dreams, imagination, and so on. So, but that's only the first part of the poem where he appears to be absolutely fed up with the kind of shock that travel brought to the thinking of the people. They started saying, oh, you're saying all these silly things. It is not there upstairs. Gagarin has seen it. But then he moves on to the poets and say, you now have to have new implements. You need to have new barometers. You need to have new thinking in order to cope with technology. So both there is a absolute hatred of the technology coming in your way of imagination. And then how he turns it out to be an inspiration for poets to do new thinking. And I saw this reflecting in your essays. At one place you emphasize the first part more, but certainly you come back to the second part also.
Yes, like you said during the time of COVID or something, you explored more, you found better opportunities, you could use technology better. For me, but what happens is sometimes I feel we've opened a Pandora's box, I feel there's no looking back. And have we created, Eric Schmidt in his book, The New Digital Age, he says internet is one of those things we have created which we do not understand fully. Now, that is a very terrifying, powerful statement. And that is what it is, a certain uneasy equation where I feel that, it may just take over. But fortunately, he says it will not, if you look at the future of technology, it's not going to overhaul society completely. There will always be a place for human interactions, the nuances, the emotions, the empathy. But areas where we are biologically limited, like for instance in medicine or even military campaigns, and all, we're using robots. That is there. But that will always be, he says, limited, and it should be. It should be. What I get apprehensive about is it's scary because the way technology is growing, it's literally controlling your life. I mean, it's weird. Like you don't even have to open the fridge or to see what you have. Everything is just going to come to you. It's going to be done for you. So it's kind of scary. For me, it's scary. And
Robotics, robotics.
Especially Google, it knows you inside out. I think of something and the next day, Google has something for me on that. And I said, hey, how the hell did you know that I was thinking about this? So it's like, they've literally, what do I say?
But these are elementary.
Hijacked our minds, our emotions, everything. That I find is a little scary because, like even today, I got a random WhatsApp thing from some German. I don't know how he got hold of, he's living in UK. And he says, I'm sorry, but some Google search, some photos, and he wants to meet. I mean, this is scary. I swear, this is scary. So I think what I'm nervous about is your privacy, your security, both are at stake. Both are at stake. Yeah.
And also your mind. They control your mind even.
Yes.
But you know what Harari said, the famous historian of the future? No, he said technology will create worthless human beings. Because after a stage, people of your generation and mine will not be able to cope with the changes in technology. You cannot make a truck driver, as he said, truck driver into a software engineer. So when software takes on life, what does the truck driver do? He has to retire because he cannot train himself back. So he says the overtaking by all the problems that you mentioned. But he mentions an extra problem that human beings after a certain age or after a certain comprehension will become worthless. So the rest of the society, and also because of medical and other reasons, people live longer. So they live longer, but there will be a burden on the society because they will not be able to contribute to it. They will have to depend on their grandchildren to tell them what to do. And that is what he had said. He had said the world will not end like Eliot said, not with a bang, but a bang, but a whimper. Yeah, he said no, but he said no, that's not how it is going to be. We are all going to become worthless human beings, and you have to wither away into the sunshine. And that is the kind of fear that he had instilled in, because he of course has said many things about how the whole world is a myth and how myths are being generated into ideology and all that. Very, very fascinating writer. But this was the biggest danger that he had pointed out in his work.
Yeah, because I think we are getting mentally also rewired, It's very different now. You look at this generation, as I told you, they're not comfortable having a conversation. They're not capable of that. They're not getting the emotional cues. They're not sensitive to body language. It's just not there.
We are so dependent on the little mobile. Suppose your
Yes, and
battery
even
runs
when they're
out.
talking to you, half the time they're looking at the phone. Now that is something which is very, very disturbing. That's disturbing. There was an interesting thing I read about, a director in a pharmaceutical company, and he was recruiting employees for his company. And so he said, the first thing I do is, of course, have a conversation. So he had a conversation with the candidates. And what they expected was, after that, okay, one conversation over, there'll be follow-ups, emails, and that's it. But what he told them absolutely stunned them, because he said, come again tomorrow or day after, and we'll have another conversation. From this conversation, you pick up themes, you pick up questions, you pick up subjects. And they found that so challenging. Just that. So these are the aspects I feel, I mean, which are not really, what do I say, conducive to the human or the humanizing.
In a way, the generational change has become more acute, shall we say. You know, some old people cannot even switch on the television set. The grandchild has to come to switch it on. You know, so that means you have lost your ability to even use use an equipment because it has changed so much. You know, it is not within your grasp of understanding, and that will widen as things move on because the new technologies are so much, and people will
Yes.
be able to cope with it. But at the same time, as you say, COVID, for example, all the disaster, you describe it in a very shocking manner as to how things happen, etc. But you end by saying that maybe this has changed mankind to a certain extent. We have become more careful, more conscious.
More caring, more conscious. And I think we realized how fragile we are and how fragile the whole ecosystem, the planet is. There was something, again, very interesting I read. You must have heard about this actor of Star Trek. This is William Shatner. He said for 60 years, I just wanted to go into space. And he said, when I finally did, I was so overwhelmed by grief. I just sat there crying. He said, what has happened to me? This is my dream come true. I'm in space. And he said, I found it like death, so cold, so empty. And he says, when I saw the earth, the little one, so nurturing, that's the only thing we have. And he says, we're just dangling there by a thread. I think COVID also, we realized that, and we realized that we are all entangled.
But does it last or we'll forget it very fast? What is your thinking? Because you know, we talk about people who go to funerals, you know.
Yes.
At that moment when you stand there, you think, oh, what a futile life, and we should do something for humanity. You know, from tomorrow I'll be a good person. It's called Smashana Vairagyam. You know? And then we come out and somebody has parked in front of your car and you'll scream at him. You've forgotten all the
Yes.
pledges that you made inside. And soon you forget it. And that probably humanity also it may happen. Because this once the COVID is entirely behind us, it'll become a matter of stories and novels and imagination, and then we move on without being affected by it. But you seem to suggest that this may have changed humanity in certain respects. We have to see that. I don't know.
You know, and then when you look around, there are constant reminders from nature. Look at global warming or climate change or the kind of things happening. We are sort of, you know, sitting up and taking notice that we have to protect this planet. This is the only home we have. So somewhere I feel it has chastened us. It's given that blow. Because earlier we thought that we just assume so many things, right? And I think I mentioned it in my book. This little microbe could just hold you to that. That's it. That's it. Brought the entire life, the entire world.
Scared beware of it. Yeah.
I was so scared.
No, but thank God the vaccine was found, measures were found to survive, you know, people to survive, etc. And so both that you have these you know afflictions. At the same time, human beings have also the capacity to deal with it. And that kept us going also. We all thought that this might go away. It didn't go away as much as we expected. But it turned out to be that technology took the better of it. If we had started cooperation among countries at that time, initially, which was impossible because of position and so on, the UN was not able to do anything. But eventually it's all fell in place and the countries, now many countries in the world, poor countries, think of India because we send them vaccines which we ourselves did not have enough. They keep talking about it and the so-called vaccine diplomacy that we engaged in. At that time, I myself was not very convinced about it because our own people are dying. How can you?
And then we are busy helping others.
But that has
I think,
now worked out well.
but I feel, I mean, we all came together. Countries, people, we just united, right? Because there was a common cause, there was a crisis which hit everyone. But after that, like you say, probably our memories, I mean, everything is short lived. Because now look at the conflict, look at the full blown war.
Yes,
Whatever
China
happened,
started a
whatever
during
happened.
during the
Yes.
pandemic. China started a war in Ladakh. So, and Russia, of course, is no better.
Look at
What I'm
Ukraine.
saying is, Smashana Vairagya does not last very long. And you
You were right. You were right.
have
Yes.
to you go back to become same old self. But it chastens you that you cannot escape. So that those memories will remain
Yes.
in
It
your mind.
mellowed you down somewhere, isn't it?
If a little
To
change in
live a soul searching. Yes. And that's the other thing I wanted to say that when you were talking about technology, we don't have time for solitude or self-reflection. And that is so necessary. I think the pandemic gave us that time, gave us that time.
unless you are
And
an Apple Watch, it reminds you, please stand up for 1 minute and meditate.
yes.
So technology, and they say you stand up, and if you stand up, they'll say, "Well done, my boy." That kind of advice also we get. So technology deals with these problems too. I think
Yeah,
we're
and there
coming
are
to the
reminders. There are reminders. So whatever happened to our good memory, you look go back to the Vedas, the Vedic times. Everything was oral tradition
no
about.
multiplication table to be learned.
Yes, we used to memorize poems. Now my memory is like a sieve. I say, okay, I can always Google it, and I
Yeah.
can get the whole thing. I can get the whole thing. Yes.
Okay, we are coming to the end of our conversation. So let us look at your overall experience as a writer. And what
Yeah.
is the philosophy? Is it a conscious philosophy that you are trying to project? Or these are, you know, different feelings and expressions which you have expressed. But do you have a kind of philosophy as a writer? And if there is, what is it?
I think it
Or is
just
there a role
comes,
model for you?
I think it just comes through because I am awed by life. I'm wonderstruck. And that's why when you ask me very small things, inconsequential things, which often go unnoticed, I see them very differently. And then I dive into them. So I think I'm just fascinated by the beauty that I see all around.
Yes,
And
sensitivity and curiosity are the major aspects of a creative writer, aren't they?
yes, very, very sensitive to that. And other than that, also, I feel this immense gratitude. And I feel morning when I wake up, I feel, I mean, it is so wonderful to be alive. I've always been, I think, a very sensuous person. So all the five senses tingling, you're alive. And it's a very happy feeling. It's a very happy feeling. And there's a
You
lot
feel
of
blessed.
happiness within me. There's a lot of joy. No particular reason. I just feel happy. And I feel life is beautiful.
Happily being me.
Yes, we complicate life. We complicate life unnecessarily.
Well, that's a good thought. This your last chapter in the second book
Yeah.
fascinated me. Inside a cocoon, and that I think captures in many ways human life and purpose in life. Your inability to understand a lot of things, because even after you read all the philosophies of the world, you will finally find that you have to find your own philosophy. There is nothing else satisfies you to that extent.
Absolutely. I feel each one, you have to come to terms with life. And that is your own battle. Yeah. Like they say, a person can come with you, but nobody can walk your walk. They can only accompany you, they can give you support, everything. Ultimately, the
You're
journey is
alone.
alone.
You're alone.
You start in the womb alone. You're born. Unless someone picks you up, you're alone. So I think loneliness is very much there. Death again, you're alone. There's no one who's going to come with you, right? So that loneliness part is there. Then
Can you take anything with you?
yes, absolutely. I just wanted to add one more thing, while in my first book, and I think some of my students also missed that. Why didn't we do Keats and Shelley? The romantic poets, they're my favorites. I grew up listening to them. My father and my uncle they were so eloquent. They would just be reciting verses from, Keats or some Shakespearean dialogue, something like that. And
No,
the
in my
more
description of you in my review, I said you are a romantic.
I am a hopeless romantic and incurable romantic, utterly romantic. So, which sometimes people find me impractical or, but I find there's a freshness, when I look at anything or any person, I feel it's
So
with a
you
joy. I look at the
read Wordsworth for pleasure while you read Milton as duty, right?
Milton again, yes, Milton. Milton, what lured me was Satan.
I remember that.
My memory of Milton Paradise Lost is just Satan, magnificent. And I feel it's the allure of evil, I think all of us are, because we like the maverick, we like the deviant, we like someone who does, it is there, it is there. So Satan, magnificent, magnificent. I never think of him as, doing evil or, being against God, nothing like that.
And T.S. Eliot finally.
It's just the character of Satan. When it's Milton or Paradise, it's only Satan and just magnificent.
But this will not be complete without your views on T.S. Eliot.
Yes, T.S. Eliot again. Yeah, T.S. Eliot again. T.S. Eliot, I found, when Wasteland, I just took the first stanza and I said, oh my God, the most forbidding, the most inaccessible, the most difficult, because you have echoes, you have allusions, you have codes. He brings in almost everything.
But the Upanishad.
But that's the best part of Eliot. What I liked about Eliot was, and what I realized was, I used to tell my students, don't go analyzing him or dissecting him. You won't get anywhere. It will be frustrating. You have to just surrender to Eliot. When you read him aloud, you just recite him. That's it. I feel it's the sound, in poetry, and then you get it. And what I like about him is the meditation on time. He talks of timelessness. It almost reminds me of William Blake, where you say you have infinity in the palm of your hand.
But you don't read Malayalam, do you? Ayyappa Panikar's poem?
Unfortunately, no. And my father was so upset because he loved Malayalam literature, and he said, it's a shame, you're a disgrace that you can't, read, or you're missing out on something. And Malayalam literature is
you have to read Kurukshetra. Of course, people said he's imitating this, that, and the other, but he said his own genre of poetry, which is now leading Malayalam literature in everywhere. So I was fascinated by both T.S. Eliot as well as Ayyappa Panikar, because he captured the spirit of T.S. Eliot and he added to it, he enriched it in a way. And since it has been translated into many languages, people understand that. Well, thank you very much for this delightful conversation. I did not expect anything less. So,
thank you so much. I was as excited as a schoolgirl, I said, oh my God, finally I'm going to be with TPS on his great show. I would call it a conversation and not just a talk show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.